Hey everyone, welcome to this week's GuitarLessons.com Academy live show. And as you can see, if you're a regular viewer, there are some changes.
Yeah.
It's going to be really exciting changes for the community. There's a lot of really cool things that are happening. They're going to allow us to bring a lot more really cool content to you and help you learn the guitar better. Just have a better overall better experience.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. We'll tell you more about things as they develop. But for today, the topic of today is finding the key of a song. And I know this can be a kind of a big trouble area for a lot of newer guitar players that are, wanting to get in and learn songs. They've learned some chords and some strumming patterns. How can I tell what key a song is? That can be a big problem. Or if the song is not as straightforward, even if you're a little more like intermediate or advanced guitar player, it can be kind of tricky to know how to find exactly what key a song is in. Right. So I have a 5-step process that I'm going to share with you that I use to know what key a song is in. Then Andrew goes about it a little bit differently.
I do.
So he's going to share his process with you also. And then once we've kind of covered the tips for doing that, what we're going to do is go through, 15 or so play-alongs or jam tracks from the members area. And then we're going to kind of walk through each one. We're going to alternate back and forth so we can kind of show you how to use all the tips for finding whatever key to whatever song you want in a real-world application.
Yes.
But first, we're going to do some jam. We're just going to pull up, actually one of the songs that we're going to use in today's example is called Dorian's Picture. I'm not going to tell you what key it's in, but the name is a hint. And we're just going to fiddle around with it.
Yeah.
Andrew will take around, then I'll take around.
Yeah, cool. That sounds good. And while we're doing that, you guys be sure to get your questions in if you have any questions. Main topic, obviously, we like to talk about finding key, but if you want to talk about something else, we can talk about something else too. It doesn't really matter. Everything's fair game. And one more thing I will mention. The PDF is downloadable below the video player. You click on the downloads tab and you can download that if you want. And that just has Nate's process, my process, and I think there's a couple other things that we might touch on, but I think that's basically it that's on there, right?
Right.
Yes. Cool. Okay, well then let's go for it.
All right. analog fade.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Cool. Let's see where to get started here. So the problem is, I hear the song and I want to learn where do I even start to figure it out, right? Well, a really good place is find out what key it's in, but how do you do that? So my 5-step process for this is really step by step, and I don't use all of these steps anymore when I hear it because I've worked through them enough to where I can skip some steps, which is great. And I'll give you some tips for developing that too. But let's start just from the very beginning, and it's listen to the tonal center. That is step 1. And if you don't know what that means, that's okay. Listening for the tonal center is just when you're listening to a song, just sit back, relax, and try to find out where the song wants to rest, where the cadences are, if you want to think about chord progressions, which we'll get into later. But just think about where the song wants to rest. Don't even do anything else. Just listen and observe. Step number 2 is what you do right after, or kind of during while you're listening. Once you're new at this, or once you're not new at this, you can kind of go right to it. Listen, and then step number 2 is try to sing the tonal center. So for example, that thing we were just playing, there were only 2 chords in the whole thing. It's a D minor and a G7.
Yep.
And so my ear is telling me that the tonal center is this note right here. Don't worry about that yet. So all I would do is listen to it and then try to sing the tonal center. Just hum it. Step number 2.
Beautiful.
And this may seem a little bit tough to you. You may be thinking, Nate, I can't do this yet. Don't worry about that. If you're new to this, you will catch on to it. It's like anything new you're learning on the guitar. When you had to learn, your open G chord or your open C, it was tough at first. But once you start practicing and applying these 5 steps on a regular basis, what you're going to notice is it's going to be a lot easier for you to recognize a tonal center and then start singing it, or just making it kind of a guess with your ear. Step number 3 for me is to, after I've sang the tonal center, is to find that note on the guitar. So could you just play D minor 7 for me? I'd like to strum it. So that is what I think the tonal center is of this particular song.
Right.
And after that, I would go to my guitar and try to find it, right? And it may take you some time to get to where you can to match pitches with singing or just by ear. So play that D minor 7 again. That's way off, right? That sounds very consonant, like it belongs, but that's not the tonal center. So that's a skill that you're going to need to work on developing, and I have some tips for you later on that. But step number 3 for me would be to find the tonal center that I was singing on the guitar. It doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter which string, just got to find it and then identify that. Hey, that note right there is a what? It's a D.
Yeah.
Cool. Step number 4 comes into play. Okay, check this out. This is going to be funny. It's going to be gross sounding, I guarantee it.
Nice.
All you have to do for step number 4 is identify whether the tonal center or the key that you're trying to figure out is major or minor. So play just the D7 vamp again, D minor 7. I'm going to play D major over this. That sounds like garbage.
Yeah.
Now, okay, you could just keep going. You can pretty much definitively say, okay, this is probably not a major key, so try minor after that. Wow, that sounds a lot better, right? So now I'm thinking I'm suspicious, and I have some definitive evidence that this is in the key of D minor, or some kind of minor D minor-ish key. And number 5, or step number 5 to the process, is where things get a little bit more involved as far as theory goes, and that's when you have to think about what chords are being played and analyze them to find out and confirm what key you're playing in. Now, I'm gonna get away from this play along real quick, just because it's a little bit more advanced, and I don't want to get there yet. Yeah. But my fiance and I she wrote the song. I just helped her with it. She on the verses, it's in the key of G major.
Yeah.
On the verses, there is no 1 chord. The G chord does not occur in the verses. So you could be led to believe that it's in some other key, right? Mm-hmm. But let's take a look at the key of G major for this sake of this lesson. Let's say you're listening to a song and you suspect that the tonal center is a G, and you've went and found that, you can sing it, and you've determined that it's major, going between major and minor. And let's just say that you think the tonal center is G, right? So what you have to do or get used to is analyzing the chords and seeing, okay, what chords are those, or what key are those chords a part of,
Right.
and what key do those chords occur naturally in, right?
Yeah.
So guys, if we could get key of G major up, cool. No, the one chord is G, two chord is minor, it's A minor, B minor is the third chord, C major is the 4 chord, D major is the 5 chord, E minor is the 6 chord, and F sharp diminished is the 7 chord. And if you don't know a lot about keys, that's okay, don't worry about that. There are a lot of resources out there for learning your keys and things like that. And matter of fact, that's one of the tips we're going to get to later on for getting better at finding the key of a song. But those are the chords that occur naturally in the key of G major. And let me get this song. That's the verse of that song I was talking about. C, E minor, and that's the whole verse. So if you're new to music, or if you're still having trouble figuring out the key of a song, you might be led to believe that it's in C major because it's the first chord and it keeps coming back to that C. Right?
Totally.
But let's see, the bridge or the pre-chorus goes to the E minor, then it goes to B minor, then back to C, then back to D, and then finally for the chorus it comes to the payoff. So what you need to do is listen to the whole song and then look at all the chords in context and use those chords, and you're going to be kind of like Sherlock Holmes here to find out exactly what the tonal center is. If I look at all those chords that were played, it was a C major, D major, an E minor was in there, a B minor was in there, and then finally that G. So if I put all those chords together and look at them as a whole, I'm going to start to realize, if I know the key of G major, if I've been working on it, I'm going to realize that, hey, there's a G major, a C major, and a D major in the key of G. There's also an E minor for the 6. There's also a B minor for the 3. So at this point, I would say that this is definitive proof for me that this song is in the key of G major. So that's what I mean by analyzing the chords of a song. Let me go through another really quick example. Let me just do that same song in a different key. Let's do the key of F major. So I'd have a B flat, a C major, D minor, A minor, and F. Now, I would have, writing out your keys is a great way to get better at doing them. So if you suspect that a song is in a certain key, write out the chords in that key and then compare it to the chord sheet that you're looking at. And if everything there is kind of matches up, then it's pretty safe to say what key a song is in. But that's my process as far as the long form of it. Now, let me review this real quick. So listen for the tonal center, try to sing it, find that note on the guitar that you're singing, test whether it's major or minor by just playing a major or minor chord over it, and then confirm with chord analysis, which is, you have to get into how keys work, which is fine, and then comparing the chords to whatever key you're suspicious of. But once you get good at this, what you'll be able to do is hear a song, and you'll be able to hear the tonal center in your head without singing it, so you'll be able to skip it, and then you just hunt around on the guitar, and then you'll also be able to hear whether it's major or minor in your head with practice. So as soon as I can hear the tonal center, it's a D, and I already know it sounds minor. You'd be like, oh, it's in D minor. And there may be some things you need to do if you hear a chord that's not naturally occurring in that key that you may need to account for to confirm that. But you'll get a lot faster at it. You can skip a couple steps out of here once you work on this a lot.
Totally.
And this is probably, the 2 tips I have for your practice time to get good at this 5-step process are do some ear training and then drill your key. So maybe take 1 key per week, maybe write out the key of G major and the chords that occur naturally in it, and just go over it for 2 minutes in the morning before you head off to work or something like that. And then maybe work on 1 or 2 intervals per week, or work on identifying the difference between major and minor chords for ear training. Those two things, ear training and then studying or drilling your keys, are going to go a long way in helping you determine what key a song is in.
Yeah.
That's my part. That's my method.
Very cool. So mine's totally different.
Right.
And I don't, it's worked for me, but nobody has ever confirmed that this is a proper way to do it, but I'm going to show you guys anyway. And it just comes from me just noodling in my bedroom when I would listen to whatever songs I was into at the time, and I would sit there and I would try and figure out, I didn't even know what keys were when I was figuring this out, but it's pretty simple. Basically, before we even look at the 5 steps, you need to know one little scale shape, and that's just a major scale shape on your G, B, and E strings. So if I do that in, this is C, but don't worry too much about it, but. One shape, you can go anywhere with that shape, so just remember you only need the one shape to be able to do this. Now, the thing about the major scale, and a lot of people don't always think about this, is there's only 2 semitones, 2 possible semitones in a key.
What's a semitone?
One fret distance. So if I were to, let's say, we'll do it to make it easy, we'll do E. If I were to just do that major scale and E major scale all on one string, so just all on my high E string, I would go. So there's only those 2 spots. So that means that when I'm looking for a key, I'm looking for, and how I do it, I look for that tiny little interval, and then that kind of lets me cheat and skip a bunch of steps for finding the key. So the first step that I have, which is on the second page of the PDF, it's identify the 2 semitone intervals on the high E string. So what I will do now, I don't want to do this with the first song we did because that will confuse the heck out of you.
Yes. Yeah.
But let's say we're in the key of G major. What I would do is while Nate is playing whatever that key, and maybe I don't know that yet, but Nate's playing in the key of G major and I don't know. What I would do is I would just take my high E string and I would just listen with my ears and look for that one interval that sounds like it fits. So if you just play a random chord progression in G,
okay,
just any chord progression as long as it's in G. So what I would do is so there's one that sounds good. So I could start there, but I'm going to keep going. Sounds like both those notes fit. Okay, so you could stop. So I found 2 spots where it's like, oh, those sound, that's the same thing. So keep that in mind. Yeah. And then this one here. Now, both of those spots are a semitone interval. And I know for sure that they sound good. And I'm just using my ears. It's pretty straightforward. You'll hear when it doesn't work. You'll notice when it doesn't work. And now I have 2 possible spots that I could put that major scale shape that I talked about earlier to see if all those notes fit with what Nate's playing. So what we would do is we take those, while that song is going on, we take those 2 spots and we just would play a major scale over them. So I'm gonna pick this spot because I knew it fit, and I'm gonna play a major scale. So go ahead. That doesn't sound right at all. That sounded terrible. So I know that that's not the right one. So then I'm gonna go to the other one and I'm gonna do the same thing. So the other spot, go for it. That sounds pretty darn good, right? Yeah. So I know that if I take the last note or the first note of that, which are the same notes, for me, that's a G. So all I would do is be like, well, I know for sure that that song is in G major. So I guess I should follow the steps. So the first one is identifying those semitone intervals. The second step would be applying that 3-string major scale shape. And then the third step is applying it to the other semitone if the first one doesn't sound right. The first one might sound right away, depending on how you guess. And if it does, sometimes it's worth checking the other one just to make sure, because one might sound more right than the other. Now, from that point, you're gonna kind of listen to whether it's major or minor, because all I found is I'm in the key of G major. So even if Nate's playing E minor to a C major, so which are 2. That's a G major scale and it fits. The notes sound good, but technically we would be more in the key of E minor. Right. And that's just the relative major or minor. So I would just listen. In my mind, that's how I just listen for it. It's like, oh, it's more majory, oh, it's more minory, and then I would just pick. And it's usually pretty obvious, but if you want to play it safe, you can just call every key a major key, and technically everything else you do will actually work. Just don't tell anyone else that you think every key is a major key. It's kind of a good way to like cheat the system a little bit. And then it's as simple as, yeah, just the root note of the scale you play. That is the name of the key. And again, if you have to change it to minor, you could play the minor scale, the relative minor scale version of that over top instead of the major scale that I did. And then that would be like, oh, that would be then my E minor. But to keep it simple, you can just call it a major scale key, and that's okay too. That's the method I use, and it works really well. Now, the problem is when you get into like non-diatonic chords and things like that, you'll start to kind of notice it's like, some notes don't quite sound right, but usually you will be able to find a major scale shape that fits, and it will sound good, and it will at least give you a really good starting point.
Cool.
That's what works for me.
Awesome. And I've never seen anybody do that like that. So
Really?
it's new to me. Nope. Yep.
Weird, okay.
Cool. I'm just gonna tune real quick.
Do you want to use my tuner here?
Yes, I would love to.
That would probably be better.
Now what we're gonna do, guys, is like I said, I downloaded like 12 or 15 jam tracks from the members area, and I'm just gonna go through, and Andrew and I are gonna alternate guessing or going through the process of what key those songs are actually in. And there are some weird ones in here. I'm gonna try to go progressively, like start with the ones that are obviously in major keys or minor keys with no non-diatonic things, or no modal chord progressions or anything like that. But we'll go from there.
Okay.
Andrew, you want to go first? I will play this. You can.
I do. Do you want to maybe just make sure the volume's not fully on so I can talk over it and
Sure.
it's not annoying?
Let's see. Okay, count off.
That's probably good, right? Okay, so I have no idea what key the song's in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my little tiny 1 semitone intervals and I'm just gonna move them around on my high E string. That one sounds pretty good. And that one sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's one of those two, and I would just go major scale shape. Definitely not that one, that sounded pretty bad. So I'll go to my other one. Hey, perfect. So I know that this is in the key of G major.
Perfect.
And it sounded really happy and majory, so I'm gonna say it's G major and not E minor.
Perfect. Cool.
Did I get it, Nate?
Yes, that is correct. I too. Okay, same kind of level here as far as diatonic or non-diatonic.
Okay.
So let's check this one out. Actually, it might not be. I don't remember what the song sounds like. Okay, it doesn't start on the 1 chord. It's 4, 5, 6, and then no, 4, 5, 6 again.
Yep.
Okay, now it settles into a tonal center. So I can hear it. I'm singing in my head right now. And I could hear that it was in G, but if I didn't, I would hunt around until I could hear that note I was humming. Then test for major or minor. Not minor for sure. Major.
Nice.
And actually, the verses here sound more like E minor because, again, it's the same. It was. Let me stop that. It was a 4, 5, or same kind of progression I showed you on that one song earlier.
That's right.
C, D, E minor. So it sounds like it's the tonal center is E minor, the relative minor of the key of G major.
Yeah.
So. And I didn't hear any non-diatonic chords in there, but if I wasn't sure, and if you're not to the level where you can just pick out a tonal center yet, what I'll do is go through and write out the chords, or if you have the chord chart for it, just go through and look at it and write down all the chords that are occurring in it, and then see if they match up with the key you suspect that song is in. Cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'll save that one for a minute. Let's do this one.
I will preface just when we start to do the modal stuff, my method, it works very differently. Instead of getting a mode because of the tonal center, the way that Nate will probably get it, I will end up with the relative major scale of that mode. And then I would have to dissect and figure out afterwards. So it does get a little bit weird, but it still works.
Right.
I promise.
Okay, this one's still fairly easy.
Okay, so I'll do the same thing. I'll continue to do it slow, and then I'll do some fast ones later. So. So there's one. So I found 2 spots. First one. That sounds terrible, so I'm pretty sure it's gonna be here. And those notes are D, so I know that it's in the key of D major.
Cool. Awesome. Let's see. What can we do? Okay, let's do this one. This one is pretty. Still like on a level 2, maybe.
Okay. I like this too. It's a good one.
Very mellow. Okay, I can hear the tonal center. I'm thinking. So go to your guitar. I'm gonna do on the high E string, and that's where my ear is telling me it's right there. So I look down. That's a C note. So what I can do is test for major or minor.
Yeah,
That sounds right. That does not sound right. Minor doesn't sound right.
sounds perfect.
So I'm thinking that this is in the key of C major.
Nice.
And I could tell you if I were to write all those chords down just because I know the song, right? That they're all diatonic chords. So if I were to look at the key of C major and then look at the chords that occur in that song, they would all match up. And I'd be like, yep, that's in the key of C major. Good.
And that's one thing that you need to know is a lot of steps can be skipped really quickly the more you do it.
Yeah.
So one little trick is that no matter what note you ever play when you're playing along, you're only 1 fret away from a right note if you're wrong.
That's
so
correct.
no matter where I go, my first note, maybe it's wrong. There's a 50-50 chance it's wrong. There's a 50-50 chance it's right. If it's wrong, I only have to go half step up or down, and I'm correct. I'm technically in the key at least. So what you can eventually start doing is Nate will play it. You don't do it right now, you don't have to, but would start, and my first note is a guess, because I have no idea. But after that, I can literally just fake my way with no other notes, and I'll end up in the key just because I know my fretboard and the shapes. So there's a lot of steps you can skip really quickly when you get it. Okay, should we do this? We'll do the same thing for this next one too.
Let's see. Which one do we want to do? This one's pretty easy too.
Give me all the easy ones. Nice, okay. So what you could hear there is I landed on a note and it didn't sound quite right, and I could hear, knowing how the key works, that it wasn't just moving half steps. I could hear how many whole steps I had to go to get to my half step. So I'll do the same thing I did again, which. So I'm in the key of G.
Cool.
Same thing.
Awesome. Okay, now it's going to start getting a little more interesting. Let's save that one. Okay, let's see.
Ooh.
I think that's the tonal center. We'll see.
Now this one's a little more challenging. I'll tell you what, this sounds like the Foo Fighters.
Yep. Now I'll stop it there just because I know where the song is. But my ear was telling me to sing, and then, I literally had no idea what key the song is. As a matter of fact, the metadata for this is wrong. It's not D major. It's B minor, relative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And D major, if you guess D major, you would still be
still be
okay,
right.
because the chords are the exact same that are in B minor, so you'd be okay when you're mapping it out, but the technical term for it would be B minor. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Do you want to give me a hard one, and I'll use my actual method
Yep.
for doing it? I'll do it quick. See if I can. Make it really hard on me. It's an F major.
What's that?
F major.
B flat major.
Wait, what? Play it again.
Check it out.
Play
Okay,
again.
this is a really good example of how. Sorry, which one was that? Sleigh Ride.
Dang
Of how you can't rely on the first chord of a song to tell you not that that's what you even did, but you can't rely on the first chord of a song to tell you what key a song is in.
Okay, let's
because it starts out heavily on whatever. Let's see what chord it starts out on. Starts out on the 5 chord of B flat.
Oh. I shouldn't have gone so fast. My bad. Oh. Okay, I see. That first part is technically an F. It could be an
Right.
F
So
major,
it
sorry.
starts.
Yeah.
It's F. It would be F Mixolydian.
Yes.
But that's a really good learning lesson that, okay, sit down with the key that you're in, listen to the whole song, write down all the chords, and then compare it to that key. And then go through, listen to the whole thing, and try to sing the tonal center, or in your case, play through the scale shape for the whole song to verify what key that's in. Because this song it starts out in B flat, and then it modulates to some other key, and then it modulates again. But like for the first part, it's just in B flat.
Because I was gonna say, I'm curious if I continue to play that F major scale over top of this part, what it would sound like. Because it obviously wouldn't work now, because it worked over the first part.
Yeah, let's find out. That's
So
a good.
if you just continue
point.
it on.
Yeah. Oh, come on.
Oh, it
play.
might not.
There you go.
Oh yeah, not even close.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'll get ya.
And then it just modulated to the key of D major there. So
Yeah.
it's really strange. And then it modulates again to the key of C and back to B flat. But you just apply the same process there. If you hear a shift in tonal center, just do the whole process again throughout a song. Because if you're singing a lot of chords that don't match up with whatever key you're in, you probably modulated. So
Nice.
here's a fun one. Actually, I'm gonna start this mid-song.
Okay.
It's a metal, so it's probably in a minor key.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I down-tuned while recording this, so. I think it's in the key of D minor.
Minor sounds right.
Yeah, that's D minor. The cool thing about something like that, this is a side note, the cool thing about something like that sticks on one chord for a long time, you could choose to play any minor scale you want over there, whether it's a natural minor scale, harmonic minor, Dorian mode, as long as the chords that it changes to later match up with whatever scale or they're, that they go with them, whatever chord progression you're playing with. So
Yeah.
that one is a little bit easier because it's really heavy on the one chord, the
Yeah.
minor chord there. Okay, let's try. What have I? Okay, this is a little bit different one. Actually, let's not do that one yet. This one brings up another good point
Okay.
for finding keys.
Now I'm not going to be so quick because I have to listen to every section.
This is a classic example of something that could be 2 things, 3 things.
So it could be like D minor,
Yeah.
but then it kind of also does a thing. It kind of almost does like a D major, but with a flat 7.
Yeah.
It's like a weird thing.
It's very bluesy. I could
Yeah.
almost see saying that this could be in D blues,
Cause
or it could be in D major with a lowered major 7,
Yeah.
or you could think about it as being in D Mixolydian.
Okay. Yeah. D Mixolydian would be G major,
Right.
correct? Yeah. Yeah.
So it gets a little tricky, especially when you start throwing in things like the blues. Let me see if I have another blues here.
Yeah.
End of the day, Dorian's picture, don't sweat. Okay, this isn't blues, but it has some blues elements in it, as it were, because the blues creeps its way into everything.
Yeah.
Okay, I know the tonal center is some kind of D right now. It sounds like a D7, so I'm thinking it's going to be like D blues.
Yeah.
Definitely not minor.
No.
So just move to 4 chord. It sounds like a blues to me,
which
for a couple of reasons.
which will screw you up when you're trying to apply a scale to it.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go a little bit longer.
Okay.
Because I know it does something. It does a twist right here.
Ah, yeah.
Oh, it's not yet.
Oh, no. I
But
know
it's-
this tune.
it gets
though,
really
yeah.
weird. So the tonal center, I'm just thinking D. I'm thinking D power chord, maybe a D7, and the progression switches here to a D, a C, G, D. So same kind of a thing.
It's that
The lowered 7, lower flat 7.
Yeah.
So you could think D mixolydian, because a D mixolydian scale is just a major scale with a lowered 7th. So I would probably tend to think that or D blues.
See, that's what I would do, and then just play that lowered 7 note in my, like, I would play like a D minor pentatonic kind of thing.
And one thing I would also do here if I was soloing would be, because it sounds kind of majory,
Yeah.
but that blues has a lowered third in it. So if you have, you can bend that lower third up a lot to the major third, and it sounds good. But yeah, blues are tricky. The more important thing there is to identify the tonal center and then the quality of the chords that are being used. Those are all like dominant 7 chords, right?
Which, because when you play that, it would make you think that you would, oh, I would play like a D major scale over it.
You can.
You can, but the thing is like, what's gonna sound better is like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Let's see. Did I do this one? Yes, I did. Okay, I did that one. Did I do that one yet? I don't think I did this one yet. This one's a little easier, I think.
Okay. So I'll go slow again for this one, just so that you guys can see. So I'll do the same thing. Now you can do the thing on the high E string on any string if you know all your shapes, but we'll just keep it on the high E to make it easy. That sounds pretty good. Now, before looking for the other one, I'm just gonna check. So I know I'm good. So I know I'm in the key of A major.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's one thing is if you can almost notice the difference with the semitones right away. It's like, I find my first semitone, it's like, oh, I'm perfectly confident that that is the 7 and 8 or 7 and 1.
Okay, so for somebody who doesn't know as much about the fretboard as you do, you had, right?
Yes.
Now you said semitone. How do I know which fret is okay? Show me how did you come up with A on that?
Okay, yeah. So I found this semitone
Right.
right there, and it sounded good. So I was gonna apply my major scale, which was this note here, this note here. I need to figure out what those notes are. Now, this one, it's pretty easy on your E string because most people learn their low E string maybe first. So
Right.
the high E string is the same. So I could go E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, or A flat, and then A, end up on my A, and then I know, okay, that's an A. And this is an octave, which you can get into octave centers later and all that kind of stuff to help navigate. But that's how I do it.
Okay. The last song is kind of the nastiest one. It's the one we jammed to earlier. And it will require you to study some keys and chord progressions, but right away, all I hear is boom, tonal center, D minor.
Yep.
Do the check major, no minor.
And now it stays on the D minor for a long time, so you're kind of,
So
It
you're
could be
kind
a
of
bunch
at
of
liberty to
things.
play whatever minor scale you want. Minor pentatonic, straight up natural minor. Okay, now here comes the actual chord progression we're getting into. So it goes D minor 7. Then a G7. Let's just say you had the chord chart to this tune, right? Now here's the thing, if I play a D natural minor scale over this chord progression, sounds good over the
pretty
D.
darn good.
Let's wait for that G7 to come back around. I think it's coming right here.
there's one note in there that's weird.
Now,
Now it kind of works.
it needs that
It does.
that raised 6 in there, which is just the Dorian mode. Now, so if you're looking at, you can think about this as a key of C major, because Dorian is the second mode of the major scale. And the chords in there are just going to be the chords in C major. But there is no C, so that's not really our tonal center.
Correct.
It would be the 2 chord and the 5 chord in the key of C major, and I would call that D Dorian.
Yes.
Because you're obviously focused on this D, that's your resting point.
Yeah.
And then the G is also in that key. So it takes a little bit of practice and you have to study your keys, but that's the whole point of this. We're learning and we're growing and we're figuring out how to apply theory, particularly with my method, apply theory and knowing about chord progressions to figuring out the key of songs, right?
Yeah, no, and the one thing that can throw you off with that song and kind of like the tell for me is you go D minor and it's like, oh, all my D minor stuff sounds great.
Yeah.
And then it goes to that G major. Is it a G major 7 that you're playing?
That's G dominant 7.
G dominant 7, okay. So the G, we'll just call it a G major because it's basically just a G major. And it's like that doesn't occur in my D minor scale at all. Or in the key of D minor, I know that for sure. So then that kind of makes me go, oh, well then it's
Something
definitely, it's definitely not that. Now I'm gonna have to reapply it. And for me, knowing I would go, oh, it's C major. But if I played a C major scale over top of it, I was doing that earlier over those same, it doesn't sound good.
All the notes in the key, you're just
Correct.
emphasizing C as the tonal center when it's not.
Yeah, exactly. So then that's why you would maybe move it into the Dorian mode.
And like on a jam track like this, you can download some guys in the members area, and it's totally fine to play natural minor, harmonic minor over that D minor chord when it's vamping. Just be aware of that G7 when it comes around.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Okay.
I think that's it.
That was more teaching than we normally do for that section, but that's
That was
okay.
fun.
We don't have a ton of questions, but if you do have questions about the stuff we talked about or anything else, fire them over, and we will get to them. We don't have a ton of time, but like I said, there's not a ton of questions right now. So, first question here. This is from Tom's Vet.
Hey, Tom.
Hi there. I have found that sometimes when I'm trying to learn a new song, the key that song is being played in is different depending on if I'm listening to the live version or the studio recording. Do you find
Yeah.
that happening a lot?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
A lot of times people will write something because it sounds good in the studio. At least this is my perception of it. But it's a little bit tough to pull off or perform live, especially for vocalists. So they'll drop it a little bit. Or maybe it's in standard tuning in the studio, and maybe they tune to D or E flat standard with their guitar. So it happens quite a bit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, songs and vocalists especially. One, just off the top of my head, I know this is something like Maroon 5 does a lot, and I'm pretty sure it's them, but what they do is they write and record all their songs in E standard, and then when they play live, they just have everything in E flat standard. So all they do is then it just takes all their songs, drops it a half step, which makes it easier on the singer. It's basically, so it's very normal and very annoying. It can be.
my fiance tunes her guitar to D standard all the time if she's playing live.
I had a friend who did
So
that
she has
too,
the
yeah.
option to, because if your voice isn't feeling strong that day or it's just a little tired, then it's nice
Yeah.
to not have to be up in the rafters.
And you could just smack a capo on there and you'd be back
Yep,
in the
exactly.
regular
Being
key,
standard
right?
tuning. Yep.
Yeah. Good question. All right, next one here. Orioric, he says, hey Nate, can you expand upon the drill your keys suggestion?
Sure. I wish I was more faithful at this. And, being a part of this community is good to kind of hold my feet to the fire to do this myself. I would pick one key per day or one key per week. Let's just say G major, since we've been doing that in this lesson. And then write it out every morning. And by that, I mean write out the scale G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and back to G, right? The one. And then once you have that written out, go through and either put an uppercase M or a lowercase m next to each chord for major or minor. So the one chord is major, the second and third chord are minor, so they'd be minor, and then the fourth and fifth chords are major, so uppercase M next to both of those. Then the sixth is going to be minor, lowercase m, and then the seventh chord is diminished chord. So all together for the key of G major, you'd have G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, and then F sharp diminished. And what you'd want to do is just say that out loud several times. You know, it doesn't take a long time. Just you have to be really consistent with it until you start to automatically remember. Hey, I know that C is the 4th chord in the key of G major. That's great. I know that E minor is the 6th chord in the key of G major. And so you want to start off by doing 1 key per week and do common guitar keys that way, like maybe start with G major and E major because we play in those keys all the time as guitarists. And just drill your keys like that, and you can translate that over to maybe you want to play a G major scale that day. So you could have that kind of reinforce it that way and only play in G major that day if you're working on scales or putting chord progressions together, something like that.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, we only have one more question.
Cool.
So unless one comes in while we're answering this will be the last question. And this is from Jeff Schmitz.
Hey, Jeff.
Is it me, or do different tuners sometimes give you somewhat different tunings? If so, it seems like if the guitar you are listening to has a different tuning than your guitar has, it would make it a little bit more difficult, or maybe I just buy crappy tuners.
When I'm recording guitars for play-alongs or whatever else, I'm always running at least 2 tuners. Because recording guitar, you're tuning all the time. You have to be as perfect as you can get it. I'll take 3 if I can get it. Usually I'll have a pedal tuner, a clip-on tuner, and then if I'm recording into a computer, I'll have the software version of the tuner and whatever recording software I'm using up. And if I'm having trouble getting the guitar to stay in tune or to sound good in a recording, I'll switch tuners, or I'll switch to the other one, or I'll take kind of a consensus of all of them until it sounds good. But yes, all tuners, for some reason, interpret guitar differently, whether it's they pick up vibrations, whether they're picking up through a cable, whether they're picking it up through the air. I don't know why, but I always find that, and I try to just have multiple tuning sources and take a consensus of it.
The best thing that you can do is invest in something that uses a strobe. Strobe tuning is the most accurate. It'll at least consistently get you the closest. And I know the little TC electronic clip-on tuner that we use all the time, that one does strobe. My main one on my pedal board, TC Electronics also makes one, but I use the Sonic Research Turbo Tuner, and I just find that to be more intuitive, and it is so incredibly accurate and precise. Another thing is intonation matters a lot. So what happens is sometimes, without getting too far into it, the guitar down here is in tune, but when the bridge, now this doesn't happen as much on acoustics, but more with electrics where you can adjust it, is not set up perfectly with string distances. When you come up here, it won't be perfectly in tune. And you can adjust that back here, mainly again on electric guitars. And that makes a really big difference too, because you'll sound inconsistent. It's like, man, I'm playing this E major chord and I sound really in tune. And then I go and play an E major chord up here, and it's like, I'm way out and I sound terrible. And that happens a lot. And so the same thing goes when you are intonating, if you know how to do it, or you take it to a pro to do it, use a really good strobe tuner, because those will get you, I think they get within about 3 cents. So there's 100 cents between notes. I think that's how it works, right?
Yeah,
Something like that. There's a certain amount of space in between each note, 100 cents. So it's like, I don't know. I would just say buy a good tuner. That would be kind of my recommendation. At the same time, you can probably make do with multiple tuners and just
I have had tuners that kind of get crappy over time, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. I don't know if getting banged around messes with them or what, but I have had that too. Also, be mindful of how hard you're pressing down on the strings. You can, if you're playing a C chord, you hear that? If I press down really hard on just one note, I can be in tune and then not be in tune anymore if I'm pressing down too hard. And if you compound that over like a bar chord, you're pressing all the strings down at different pressures.
Yeah.
You can make your guitar go out of tune. So just try to be really consistent and only use as much pressure as you need when you're playing.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right in that. Well, I think that's it for questions. So next week, we will be doing Overdrive and Distortion 101, which is going to be a fun one, a little bit more gear-oriented.
Yeah, and if we can, we'll get our hands on some more overdrive. But I have a lot, you have a lot.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can grab some kind of the more common ones that people kind of get into, but we'll hopefully have some variety and we can show you kind of the differences and start understanding that stuff as I drop my pick.
Cool.
Anything else you wanted to talk about, Nate?
Maybe just do a little more jamming.
Oh, we can do some more jamming.